Okay, these are the levels of organization notes. That's the next thing we're covering, guys. That TEAC 712C says recognize levels of organization in plants and animals, including cells, tissues, organs, organ systems, and organism. So those are the 5 levels. That picture right there is a good illustration of all the levels within an organism. The organism happens to be the elephant. So you start off with a cell, which is an animal cell, obviously, because an elephant's an animal, right? So it could be any number of cells, but they're showing bones in the skeletal system, so we're assuming that's maybe a bone cell. And groups of those make up bone tissue. An organ could be just one bone there, like say the femur. And then groups of organs make up an organ system, in this case the skeletal system of that elephant. And then finally, groups of systems make up the organism. So we've already talked a lot about the cell and it being the basic unit of structure and function in all living organisms. And I gave you a typical plant cell, typical animal cell there. That's where it all starts. So that's the simplest of all living things, and it's the lowest on the levels of organization of living things. All right, examples of cells in animals would be muscle, bone, nerve cells. There's blood cells, skin cells, sometimes called epithelial cells. You have your sex cells, the egg cell, the sperm cell. You have fat cells. In plants, they have different names, although some of those cells might look kind of similar. Of course, they have different parts, right? Cell wall. Some of them have chloroplasts, not all of them, but epidermal or parenchyma, spongy, cambium, xylem, phloem. Those are all examples of plant cells, different kinds of plant cells. And I'm not going to make you responsible for all those names. It's just examples and what they call them. Here's some diagrams of different muscle cells, right? So that make up muscle tissue. Skeletal muscle, the one at the top, which would be the type of muscle tissue that's attached to your bones. And you have cardiac muscle, which is only found in the heart. And then smooth muscle, which is found in organs like your intestines or your stomach. Right. We have some pictures of bone cells here. So osteocytes is what they're called. There's different kinds of bone cells and what they look like, but they basically have that structure, very kind of rigid. You know, maybe compare these almost to plant cells in rigid structure. Right. Here are some nerve cells, a diagram at the top, and an actual nerve cell enhanced with radioactive dye so that you can actually see some of the detail there. But they almost look like a one-eyed alien or something like that. This right here is the cell body with the nucleus. You have this myelin sheath, the axon, and which ends up with these things called dendrites. And then the next nerve cell would be kind of attached here with a little electrical signal basically that's sent from one cell to the next. With nerve cells, they carry messages from your different parts of your body to your brain and back. And so they're kind of like a chain messaging system and send little electrical impulses through those nerve cells. So that's why they're designed this way. The next nerve cell right after, and then so on and so forth. And this, you know, there's an actual one here, and you can kind of see the similarity. Here are some blood cells. All right, these have not been enhanced with any kind of color, but this is a red blood cell here. This is a white blood cell here. This is what's called a platelet. Right? And you can see the white blood cell and red blood cell here after they've kind of been enhanced with some coloration. We've got some different cells here. I believe these are liver cells. This is some kind of plant cell like stem plant cell. These are epithelial cells like cheek cells. Then you have your sex cells, the sperm and egg here. The next thing is tissue. Right? And tissue is similar cells working together to perform a specific function. All right, so examples of animal tissue would be muscle and nervous and epithelial and connective. And plants, you have what's called dermal and then ground and vascular. Those are the examples of different plant tissue. Here's a diagram I really like because it shows one organ, the stomach, but all the different tissues that make up that one organ. And actually blood is considered a liquid tissue, so that's actually one type of tissue, and you have different ones, columnar epithelium and nervous and loose connective, smooth muscle. There's different tissues making up that one organ. And here are those same three types of muscle tissue I showed you earlier, and that shows you where they go. The smooth muscle, mostly in your digestive organs, like stomach, intestines. Your cardiac muscle only found in the heart, and then your skeletal muscle, which is attached to bones, and it is muscle that you control, right? So it says voluntary control, you control this one. Involuntary means you do not control it. So your heart beats whether you want it to or not. When you swallow food, it's going to start to push down towards the digestive system and start the digestive process. You have no control over that. The food gets moved through there. Right here is just a tiny section of skin, epithelial tissue, and you can see all the layers and everything involved in just a small piece of skin. Like that could just be from your arm. At the top layer with hair, you can see sticking out, but there's the epidermis, dermis, subcutaneous. You have capillaries, which are blood vessels. You have nerve receptors here. You have sweat glands and oil glands and hair follicles, all that involved in the skin tissue. And not that different. If you go back, you can see kind of similar in layers, although this is plant tissue, right? So this is leaf tissue. I mean, you see the word epidermis just like on the other one. And there's a lot involved there. The veins are really not veins like ours. They're the xylem and phloem. So those types of vascular bundles that are occurring in the plant carry the water or carry the glucose through the plant. And here's a cross section of that stem. You can see this dotted line down here, and if you were able to look at that under the microscope, you would see all the different kinds of tissue. The vascular tissue, which is made up of xylem and phloem, the ground tissue here, and then at the very outside, the dermal tissue. And next we have organs. Organs are different tissues working together to perform a specific function. So in animals, something like a brain or a stomach, intestines, heart, lungs, liver, there's a lot of different examples. In plants, something like this leaf is an organ. Or buds, that's the potential flower, and then the flower itself, the fruits, right? Flowers and fruits are part of the reproductive system of the plant. Stems are an organ, roots are an organ, tubers, which is something like a potato, right? Rhizomes, which are also involved in asexual reproduction in plants. Here's some examples of organs that we have, right? The brain, obviously, over here. You've got the stomach, and look what that stomach is. I wonder if you guys realize that. Your stomach is really just under your chest, and what we think of as the belly down here with the belly button, that's really where your intestines are. So your stomach is up higher than most people think. Here's the heart. Here's the liver, right? And gallbladder tucked in there. Here's some plant organs. Those are buds I was talking about. Here's the actual flower. Fruits. The fruit, guys, is actually the plant ovary, right? With the potential babies inside those fruits. There's seeds in those fruits. Well, there might not be seeds in those because, in the grapes anyway, because we've kind of genetically modified those fruits to be better for consumers. So less seeds mean less trouble for people eating the fruits. So they've kind of bred the seeds out of a lot of those types of plants. But in nature, fruits, right, are holding those seeds, and organisms consume those fruits with the seeds, then spread the seeds somewhere else. So that's a reproductive strategy of the plant. Here's a stem, right? So that's another organ of a plant. Then we have organ system, group of different organs working together to perform a particular set of functions. So in animals, a circulatory system, respiratory system, nervous system, digestive system, reproductive system, muscular system, skeletal system. There's actually a few more that we're going to have to learn. That'll be kind of the next thing we go into after this. And then plants, there's a couple of different systems listed there. The shoot system, the root system, of course, they also have a reproductive system. All right, so here's a few examples of the human systems, right? Skeletal system, which is all your bones, also ligaments, cartilage involved in that. Muscular system, which would be all your muscles, not just your muscles that you see from the outside there, but things like smooth muscle, cardiac muscle. Your digestive system, which has quite a few organs in it. And then respiratory system would be your lungs mostly, which take in oxygen and then allow you to get rid of CO2. Your nervous system, and all that green there is all the body nerves, right? Your brain is a big part of your nervous system, and then your spinal cord, which runs down your back, and your backbone there, your vertebral column. And then the circulatory system, which is all the veins and arteries, capillaries, all the blood vessels in your body, but along with the heart and the blood itself. Those all make up the circulatory system. Here's some examples of systems in a plant: the reproductive system, the flower in this case, the vegetative or shoot system, right? The root system. Those are systems of the plant. And then finally, the last level of living things is organism. So the organism itself, anything that's living and is made of cells, needs energy, excretes wastes, grows, responds, reproduces, and uses gases. And guys, you should recognize that and the list, because those are all, remember, the characteristics of living things. There you go. And it says animals, plants, fungi, protists, bacteria. You should also recognize that list. Those are the kingdoms, aren't they? Basically the kingdoms of all living things. All right, and here's some examples, some pretty obvious examples of plants, or not plants, but animals, right? Here's plants. We have fungi or fungus, different forms there. You got mushrooms or toadstools and different kinds of fungus that grow on dead leaves or logs or things like that, but also mold, like what you would find in or on bread after it's been left in the bag in your pantry too long. Here are some one-celled organisms, right? The amoeba, a paramecium, a euglena. Here are some different examples of bacteria, and also considered an organism, right? So something like Staph aureus or Staph pyrogenes or strep. These are all organisms that cause infections in humans, right? Staph infection, you've heard of that. That's those. Or strep, right? There's Streptococcus pneumonia. Cholera is a disease you don't hear about very often. That used to cause a lot of problems for us. E. coli and salmonella, those can still cause problems in people. It depends on whether you cook your food a lot of times long enough or washing your hands before you prepare food. Some other different bacteria and bacteria-related diseases. Tetanus down here. So those are all considered organisms as well, right? Make sure you're filling in your notes with the definitions for each of the levels